NSFW, what's the horniest thing you've ever done? This is a repost. I went to a woman's house late at night in rural upstate NY. We had been talking to each other via email at the time, about 1997. We met via Yahoo Personals. Neither of us knew what the other looked like. Not everyone had a scanned picture. I went over at 11 PM on a Friday night. I didn't have a roommate at the time. Went into a completely dark house, located in the woods, and had sex with a woman whom I had known for a couple of weeks with just several phone calls between us. When the morning came, we were both attracted to each other. We ended up dating for almost a year. It worked out, but seriously, it was a stupid thing to do. I made a woman out of clothes and a styrofoam head and made out with her. SMH I was 12. Back in high school one time I jerked off 11 times in one day, between 6 AM and 1 AM. My D was in so much pain and I couldn't move for a day or so. Don't do that. My mom went shopping at JCPenney and I was waiting in the car. I was about 13 and I was horny ASF. She had some tissues in the car and I jerked off into them. I didn't want a litter so I just put them in my pocket till I got home. Cycled for 4 hours to get to a woman's home in India who had matched with me on Tinder. The chat got very heated quickly and she wanted to duck a white guy. The reason I cycled was because I was on a round the world bike trip. Amazingly it was completely legit and we pretty much had sex on and off for 24 hours. And we were having sex within 10 minutes of seeing each other for the first time. I cannot describe how horny I was getting messages from her as I got closer and closer to her home. I went to go meet a girl on her last night before she moved to a different state so she could suck my D. She really wanted to for some reason. I'm parked at her apartment waiting for her to come into my car. As I'm waiting she asks for a pic of my hard D. So I jack off a little to get hard and I end up coming in like 10 seconds. So I turn my phone off and drive home before she ever gets to my car. I was so ashamed lol. Drove an hour in to see a girl I had previously made out with because she said she needed a duck buddy for the night. Got to her place around 9. Hung out with her and her roommate for a little bit then went to the bedroom. She totally shut down my attempts to initiate anything physical and said it was just the alcohol talking earlier and that she was not DTF at all. So we just cuddled for a bit and fell asleep. At 3 AM she wakes up and runs out of the room. I'm like okay WTF and then go back to sleep. Next thing I know she turns on the lights and tells me to get out. Had a very long drive and total confusion back to my place. Got home at 4:30 AM. Virginity still 100% intact. My husband and my first date lasted 3 days. The only time we went outside was to get more condoms and some Gatorade and snacks from around the corner. It took us a week to have a real date because we'd end up just jumping in bed and would never even make it out the door. A lot of people are asking about Gatorade and condoms. Gatorade is a drink made with sugar and electrolytes. It gives you energy and tastes really good when you've been exercising and sweating a lot. 6 is a workout and a lot of 6 makes you really dehydrated. Condoms are because you should always practice Sappho 6 and change condoms as soon as the person with the D ejaculate. Most people don't have huge amounts of Gatorade or condoms at their house, which is why so many people had to pause a 6 to go get them. Jerked off in every room in the house in one day. My college roommate ended up being a week late to orientation. In that week, I met and got the Skype details of an online dom and she had me edge a whole night and only finished by wrapping a lanyard tightly around myself and finishing to her rubbing grapes on her nipples. Probably jerked it in the backseat while on a family road trip. Not my proudest moment. Was 12 or 13 and just discovered masturbation about a week before. Running to a convenience store at 3 AM with a guy I just met to buy condoms and 2 bottles of Gatorade so we could do it on an air mattress in the living room of my sister's house at 3 AM. 19 me wanted to duck so badly that, after going out with this really great girl, I convinced her we should park on a less visible side road to talk. Turns out less visible roads have less visible ditches on the sides and there goes my car into the ditch. Now we are stranded in the middle of the night. In the middle of nowhere. She takes her shoes off and tells me to go outside and push and hops in the driver's seat. And so I did. I did push. 8 years later I'm still pushing whatever she tells me to. Jacked off in the ocean. I was on holiday with my mum and we were sharing a room. I took a late evening dip and was curious to see if I could jack off while my D was underwater. Since I hadn't done it for the past week, I nutted pretty quickly, then just kind of swam around for a bit. When I was about 15, I got an erection so intense that I was screaming in pain. This was before I figured out what masturbation was, so I had no way to relieve the pressure. Jerked off in my middle school bathroom. And before you sickos say anything, I was in middle school at the time. Oh, I also found a box of Playboys stashed in a bathroom closet at a storage building. Laid all the centerfolds out and went to town. Whacked off to a CVS weekly ad. Came up with the bright idea of using Icy Hot to enhance my jerk session. I was 13. Don't recommend. Jerked off into a random dirty cup I found in a parking lot while sexting a girl and got too turned on to make it home. Parked in the lot. Found some litter and busted it. Went on a road trip with my family once when I was like 12 or 13. My parents are in the front. My brother and sister are sitting in the middle seat of our mid-sized SUV and I'm in the back. Each of the kids takes a turn getting the back row to themselves to stretch out a little until the next pee-gas snacks break. So naturally during my nap time in the back I jerked off under a blanket with zero material and just jizzed into my underwear and sat in it like the filthy animal I was. Edit. Loving that this is my top comment all time now. Masturbated with a Halloween monster glove. I enjoyed the hell out of it but lost those gloves. I was at my grandparents' house, sharing a room with my sibling and all 4 other bedrooms were full of sleeping family members. I was so horny I went into the bathroom to be quiet about it. Thing about girls is, super horny equals super wet equals can't feel friction plus clit is so sensitive it's in overload equals no orgasm. Was a very frustrated swamp. Edged for 6 hours in one sitting. One time when I went to church I excused myself to the bathroom and went use the fastest hand in the Wild West so I could nut and get back in a few minutes. My ex was getting a little handsy under the covers with my tackle while we were watching TV at her parents' place. Her parents are in the kitchen and wouldn't you know it, some of their family friends showed up. Well, somehow nobody noticed. They left and her parents went to bed while we watched Polar Express. I finger banged her while her parents were sleeping on the other side of the wall about 30 feet away. Matched with a girl on Match.com way back when it was all website and email only. Anyways, matched with this girl and first conversation. By some miracle, we agreed that she was gonna come over that night, go right to my bedroom, bang and she'd leave. Welp, that's exactly what happened. Both happy. Roughly a month later I'm walking into a company for a job interview and one of the interviewers was got the job. In high school I was in band, and I played the saxophone. Anyway, one night I was super horny and my porno magazines were not at home at the time as I let my friend borrow them. This was a time before phones so I couldn't go online and get some hardcore porn straight away. Long story short, I stuck my D in the saxophone and rode it. One time I was really horny so I asked my wife if we could have a six. She said yes. Total win. No regrets. Fap with friends in a cemetery. Dry humping while making out at the back of my school. 11:30 PM. When I was 19 I had a huge crush on a friend of my brother's. We were all hanging out at my brother's house one night. Bro goes to bed and I realized his friend was into me too. So we made out and talked for hours. And agreed it was a good thing that we were at my brother's house and wouldn't be able to hook up so we could just get to know each other better and not move too fast. A few minutes later I looked at him and said, or we could just have a six in my car. Drove around the corner at 3 AM to a dirt parking lot and ducked in the back seat. Turned into a 2-year relationship, though. Memories. Offered a girl a $90 cab ride to my place. She declined me but it worked out. I married her 10 years ago. She was well worth the wait. Truthfully, and yes, she knows she was supposed to be a booty call. But that booty so good I married her. Made an apple pie and sipped tea while wearing an oversized cardigan and reading about Norman Rockwell. Sexted with a friend where there was a mutual interest. Then we had our first kiss couple days later during a game of truth or dare. We were in our early 20s but our friend group was dorky AF. then ducked for the first time the next day. We wound up being FWBs for nearly 2 years. I lost my virginity in the dormitory kitchen at 3 AM. We didn't have any other place to do it, cause my roommates were sleeping in my room. The kitchen is shared by the entire floor, 80 students on each floor, and we were butt naked with clothes thrown all over the kitchen. Thanks God nobody wanted any midnight snack. Honestly speaking, getting hard by reading these comments is the most horniest thing I've ever done. Pre-internet I spent 4 hours drawing a naked woman, pixel by pixel, poorly, in Ms. Paint to jerk off to. Jacked off and noticed my neighbor watching me. We made eye contact and for some unknown reason I just kept going while just holding eye contact with him. I jacked off to TV commercials just to see if I could. They weren't even sexual or hot in the slightest, but I still busted a nut before my show came back on. About 16 years ago, I had just gone through a really bad breakup. You know, the kind where you still duck for a few months afterwards, and neither of you feel good about it. My ex went to see her sister for a weekend, and I offered to dog sit for her. Went out to a bar with friends that night and met a really cute girl. She wanted to go back to her place, but it was about an hour away and I had the dog to think about. So I invited her to my ex-girlfriend's house and we spent the next 24 hours or so ducking in my ex's bed. A few years later, I married that girl from the bar. Worked out pretty well. Masturbated in the same room as family. I once jacked it to VeggieTales LaMayo. Fingered a girl while 2 of her friends were laying in the bed below. It was a loft bed, one of them in a call with her brother. Also, with the same girl, I was sexting while sitting in the bus while in sweatpants and had a really hard time hiding my boner. To combat my post-period horniness, I tired drawing one NSFW image. I filled up a whole 100-page sketchbook in a day and a half. My parents weren't home all day and I was expecting my period. I jerked off 32 times before I lost count. I used to work at a zoo and I had this co-worker in my department I was into. There were a few days we would hook up in different behind the scenes locations. I was a super horny young 20-something. Why wait until after work when you're all showered and not sweaty when you can do it on the clock with hundreds of guests walking nearby? I think the horniest I've ever been was when I was convinced by a FWB to pop some speed and Viagra. She was limping for a few days as a result. Humped my school bag when I was 14 or something. I was too horny cause I saw this beautiful lady in my aunt's neighborhood. She probably noticed the little soldier standing, cause she always gave me this weird but not affirming smile whenever we came across each other. This wasn't me, but I was on the receiving end of this horniness. A guy I went to high school with drove 2.5 hours across the state for me to duck him in my dorm. I offered to let him spend the night, but he thought it'd be weird to spend the night with a guy. Apparently sex was no problem though. He immediately turned around and made the drive back home. In high school me and a guy jerked each other off in the bathroom. Also found out how I was bisexual. Jerked off 20 plus times in a day. Turns out coming too much in a short period of time can give you a splitting headache too. Jesus, we just started this quarantine. Pace yourself. I used to challenge myself to jack off in all of my friends' houses, not in the bathroom. Like speed jack off while they go to the bathroom or are in the other room or something. Never got caught. I was a ducking idiot. Lol. I made a dildo out of wet paper towels and plastic wrap when I was 13. It didn't work out though because it wouldn't actually fit. My mom found it a week later shoved behind my bed but didn't say anything. Laying on the couch watching TV, the thought of this girl I talked to earlier in the day came into my head. In particular her rear end. I started playing with myself under the blanket, with my dad in the next room over and no closed doors in between. Shivers while coming 3 times in a row without stopping. I'm a guy. Was jerking off under a blanket after taking a shower. My mom bursts in my room and sees 3/4 of my body under a blanket, and no shirt on me. She paused and said, "Are you touching yourself?" I looked her in the eyes and said yes. She awkwardly turns around and says, "Okay, I guess I'll knock next time," and as she closed my door I said, "Yeah, probably a good idea." Then I continued on with my sesh. Masturbated while driving a car. Also drove an hour and a half 3-4 times to sleep with a guy I was really attracted to. I could have slept with someone in the same city as me, but he was just so hot I couldn't resist. When I was about 17-18, I was forced to share a room with my then 13-ish-year-old brother. He would watch porn when he thought I was asleep. I would watch too and get myself off. I 100% duck my pillow. First, I make a slit, not too long, careful as to not rip the edges, making what I call the husband stitch. Then, I take 2 Ziploc bags and I fill them with Amy's organic lentil soup, which I microwave to exactly 98.6 degrees, not enough to burn you, but just enough to feel warm and inviting. Then I place them in the slit of the pillow. There's another slit in the back, but that's only for my birthday. I must have been like 11 or 12, but I didn't know what masturbation really was. One night I got really horny but didn't know what to do with myself, so I started humping my pillow, like with my D under the pillowcase. It felt really good, so I kept going until I came, and again I was young and sex ed failed me, so I was confused AF. But all I knew was that damn that was good, and I continued to masturbate like that for much longer than I should have. And no, I didn't sleep on that pillow, ever. Flirting with girl at work, about 10 years ago, and finally got to hang out with her socially in a group. It was fine but nothing happened. 2 weeks later she calls me to say that she is apartment sitting and that if I wanted to skip work the next day with her that she'd really like that. Nobody knew, and it was an amazing day spent in bed either having amazing sex or napping in between 6th day of my life. I went on vacation with my girlfriend and her family. She woke me up in the middle of the night, and we had sex on the balcony of the condo while her brother and mom were sleeping. I know it's not the craziest thing, but she's my first girlfriend and we've only been together for about a year and a half. But it was really ducking hot. I once was extremely horny and asked my friend who is a girl to spit in my hand. She questionably spit in my hand for the cost of a Twix, and I went to the bathroom too. Ick. I still feel scarred when I see a Twix now. I laid a grocery bag across the seat of a chair and looped the hell out of the inside of it, held down the bag on either side, then ducked the outer it to some red-shoed iris. I was a lonely 10yo. I groped my husband on our first date. We were making out in his car outside the restaurant. In my defense, I was instantly attracted to him physically, and he made me laugh for the entire meal. We hooked up for days later. Seeing as these are all guys in the comments, I'll show you all a girl's most shameful moment. When I was 13, I for some reason got really horny in church. I went with my boyfriend and his family. I was going to go to the bathroom to masturbate, but since it was far and I typically didn't go to that church, my BFF's parents made him walk me to the bathroom. Long story short, I ended up giving my boyfriend head in a church bathroom. Sorry God. I've had some awesome and crazy sex with my husband, and he's amazing and rocks my world. But when I was 16 I really thought I loved my BF, as all 16-year-old girls do. Anyway, he gave me this stuffed animal horse, because I'm a basic itch, and that night he asked me to get naked and rub my clit in it. I couldn't come but I tried. I had never come before then, so it didn't work out, but I was so horny and he asked for a pic. Scares me that there is a picture of me naked sitting on a large stuffed horse somewhere. Probably messing around, just fooling around. My boyfriend between when we were on stage in theater, like, in the dark corner of the room where everyone else was also waiting to go on stage. I can't imagine no one heard us or smelled their sick smell. I think they just didn't say anything. I mean, if I could hear and smell it, surely someone less than 10 feet away can. First love man, makes you crazy. He also had this loft that had a computer and TV, no door, and it had an open balcony to the living room, where his parents always were. I wasn't allowed in his room, so we were always up there, having sex or messing around. I laugh my butt off when PPL are like, well, I'm not allowing my kid's boyfriend girlfriend in their room alone. Like if a teen wants to mess around or have a sex, they'll figure out a way. Teens will mess around under a blanket 15 feet from their parents if they want it bad enough. Keeping Johnny out of Sissy's room is the least of your worries. Had sex 9 times in one day. I have no idea what was up with me, I just could keep going again and again. Last few times went great but I kept going back. We were both sore for a while after. 10/10 would not do again.